Hey everybody, this is Jared, and this is my sobriety story. Um, Gotta say, I'm 42 years old. I've been drinking since I could legally do so, and maybe a little bit before. This is not where I would have thought I would be today. I don't know who's going to see this story, if I'll even end up posting it, but I have to say I am officially 2 months into my sobriety, and that is from alcohol. All right, so here we go. You can see it's around Christmas time. It's actually December 2nd, and I am, like I said, officially 2 months into my sobriety. I think it's relevant to speak to who I am, where I came from. I live in a small town. I was an anxious kid, small class, you know everybody, you know all their families. But I think really my personality um, in some regard has played a part in drinking to excess, which has been an issue for me. Like I said, I was a very anxious child. I was bullied, and in my mind, I try to be fair to myself. In my mind, I feel like I was bullied a lot. I'm not so sure that's the case. I think I was a very emotional child. I was a very emotional boy. Um, and I took things that people said to heart way too much. And I think that just led me to more anxiety. I know that it has affected me even into adulthood. I've always struggled with social situations um, because I never felt confident enough. Our, in my area, sports are a big thing. I was never a phenomenal athlete. I really wasn't. I was very average at best. And so I was just different. I don't know. I had other likes and other things that I involved myself in. For example, music and hunting and fishing and all that stuff. So, anyways, I was a different child. I held myself to a standard that I don't think I should have. I always was very. I was always looking hard inside me. I was always thinking really deep. And a lot of that had to do with my faith, and my faith will come up in this story a lot because that's who I am. But I really wanted to be a good person. I always have. I always wanted to do the right thing in most every situation. And it put a lot of pressure on myself in a good way and a bad way. It's hard to try to live with trying to be perfect when we're very imperfect. So I think that led to a lot of my anxiety, which we'll find out, I think, drinking, minimized for me. Um, it's actually kind of ironic too because I was always anxious. I still hate being in groups of people. And I know there's a lot of people that I talk to that know me, and they'd be like, that's not the Jared we know." Well, it is true. I really struggle in social situations outside of a group of people I'm comfortable with. And again, it's ironic. I actually became a radio DJ right out of college, and people would say to me, "How can you do that? How can you talk to 10,000 people at one given point in time?" I mean, it was the number one station in Lansing, Michigan at the time, and the the reason is because I was in this room and no one could see me, and that was very important to me. No one could see me, and I couldn't see eyes judging me, or at least that's what I would perceive. I was always nervous about how what people felt about me, and that's because I've learned that I'm a people pleaser, big time people pleaser, and people pleasers know it can be exhausting. I think it's a great trait. I really do. I mean, we try to be good people, but it can be exhausting. It's hard to say no when someone needs you. It's just one of those things. So I put a lot of pressure on myself. I was a good kid. I got good grades. I was in my top 10. Granted, there were only about 35, 40 of us, but hey, still top 10 as far as grades go. And, I lived a fairly normal life, but I felt a little bit alone and again, anxious. Anxious seems to be a trend throughout my life. So anxiety, I should say. So anyway, I got through school. I really didn't drink much in school at all. And what I mean by that is high school. I tried to be really good. I tried to steer clear of it. Now, there were a couple episodes, yes. That being said, once I moved on to college, that's where the freedom and excitement began for me. And why? It's because I felt like finally I was being accepted for me. I kind of got to start over. I didn't have to think about people who knew me from childhood. And even though they probably weren't judging me like I thought they were, that was a big thing for me. So I went out to college. I went to Michigan State University, and I had myself a grand old time. And what I mean by that is I started to drink. And drinking was something that gave me a lot of confidence. And that's not abnormal. And I think that's a part of why many people do drink. It took down those social anxiety barriers a lot. I was able to interact with women in a confident way, and it helped me gain confidence. The problem was, once the drinking was over, the next day, I struggled to rebuild that confidence. So you'll see how the trend keeps going. So all through college, I drank, and I drank, it started off Friday, Saturday, then it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, fun day. Then it was Thursday night at this bar has a special, and Wednesday night at this bar has a special. I mean, I was drinking probably pretty consistently 5 out of the 7 days of the week. Not all to excess, but many to excess. And it was just one of those things, everyone does it. You tell yourself that. And in college, I mean, there's a certain amount of truth to that, unfortunately. But I thought I was really happy, and I thought everything was coming together. But I started experiencing quite intense anxiety. And I thought it was because I was going to school. I was working 3 jobs at one point just to try to make ends meet. And I thought that's why, anxiety from all the stuff I was involved in. Well, fast forward a few years, and I could sense that the anxiety really came on, and there's a term for it, hangxiety. So it's after a drinking episode, the next day, I would have intense anxiety. And it wasn't over anything in particular. It was just this nagging feeling in my stomach. It felt like gut rot. And I just felt horrible. And unfortunately, a way to ease that many times would be to, you guessed it, go back to the drink. So my college years were full of fun, a lot of drinking, and that I think carried into the next part of my life. Out of college, I kind of went through almost a depressed state because I was so happy with being surrounded by friends all the time, and it wasn't real life. It's partying time. It's fun. I don't have the responsibility that I'm going to have after college, but lo and behold, the life after college came, finding real jobs. I moved out of the state for a little while, came back, started working for a company where I knew a few individuals, and I started a band. I was into music. I loved playing guitar. So music was a big thing. And then with music came attention from the ladies a little bit, which I enjoyed, and also came playing out at the bars and drinking. So drinking just kept on. And I never thought, it was less than college, I would say, but I never considered myself an alcoholic by any means because I felt like I had full control over it. It was just something I did at will. It wasn't something that I had to do, and that's where it, in my mind, was okay. So playing in bands and just drinking, and then I met my what would become my wife. And she also became part of our band, and she started saying things like, "Man, you shouldn't be driving after playing all night like that." And I kind of dismissed it. I didn't think it was worth my attention, that's just what you do. I mean, anybody that's in a band does it. And quite frankly, it drove a wedge between me and her in some regard because I was too immature to admit that, yes, I shouldn't be driving, especially after playing and drinking the entire show through, which could be 3-4 hours or longer. So it just was a continuous part of my life. Well, then ultimately I got engaged, and we're moving on into the next chapter. My wife was 5 years younger than me, and still is, believe it or not, still is to this day. But we were one of the first to get married in my group of friends, and I just couldn't let go of that friend life yet. I couldn't let go of the drinking on the weekends, and it's not that anyone wouldn't struggle with that a little bit. I mean, it's normal to go from one part of your life to another, and the transition not be a very easy one, and it wasn't for me. And it put, again, a little bit of a wedge between me and my wife because my wife wanted to start a family. I wasn't ready. I was older and wiser, but I wasn't ready. So we get married. We get pregnant on our honeymoon. I'm in this band. I'm worried about what that's going to mean. Selfishly, I'm thinking about me, and I needed to change. So I started, not hanging out with the boys as much. But it's still, I lied to myself and said it's normal. It's okay. But let's fast forward now into later years into marriage. Still, fights were happening. There seemed to be a common theme that I wasn't willing to admit, and that is drinking. My wife was never a big drinker, is not a big drinker, and so I would find that I would drink a lot more than her in most every situation, and that would frustrate her. And looking back on it now, I get it. But then I was just like, come on, this is normal. In this small town we live in, drinking is very normal. It's normalized and not necessarily in a good way. And this is not me being holier than thou. I promise. There's many people can drink and do just fine. And this is not to say this is for everyone. It really isn't. I'm not holier than thou. But the one that is holier than thou has helped me realize that I needed to change for me and for my family. So yeah, fights continue to happen, and she continued to call it out. I still owned my Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, but I noticed a few things. One, erratic behavior. I think for most people, drinking, drinking exaggerates your state of being. So if I was happy, I was super happy. If I was sad, I was pretty sad. But I also noticed that if in that drinking episode, a different emotion came to be, it would switch very quickly for me. So erratic behavior, going from very happy to very frustrated and angry and saying things I wouldn't say in front of my wife, in front of my kids. Again, going back to the religious aspect, the religious component of it, it makes me sin more. It makes me think things I shouldn't think. It brings lustful thoughts into my mind. This is just being real. That shouldn't be there. It's stuff that the devil pulls you into, and the devil has every bit. He's in the bottom of that bottle, and that's something I had to realize over time, that he promises happiness, and for about the first couple glasses of whatever it is I'm drinking, there it is. There's that magic component that I seek, that I sought after, but it didn't last. So, that was one of the things that started to become evident, especially now that I have an older kid. I have 4 children, one on the way, and my oldest child was getting old enough to kind of see things, and he's noticing Dad behaves a little differently, and he's telling me stories, and the next day I'm asking him questions about stuff that he had told me about, and that was another thing. Memory lapses, having conversations, full-fledged conversations with my family, and the next day not remembering them. And my wife, I would say something. I was actually scared to talk to my wife the next day sometimes because I wouldn't want to bring up something that we had already talked about, not knowing that we had talked about it. So these were starting to seep into my everyday life. I still made it a promise to myself, which made myself think I was okay, saying I'm not going to drink through the week. Nope, because I'm not an alcoholic and I don't need to drink during the week. But Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are mine. And I've wanted to quit. It seeped into my brain, but there were too many things going on. You see in the back of me, it's Christmas time now. I started this sobriety in October. Probably one of the hardest times for me to do that. Why? Because there's always reasons to drink, especially in this small town. And that is October's hunting season. Well, then you get through November. Well, that's gun season. So you got archery season, you got gun season. Well, then what happens? Then you've got Thanksgiving. Then you've got Christmas. Then you've got New Year's. Well, then you've got that time where you don't have to drink, right, for spring. Of course not. Wait, you do. There's March Madness. And that's almost a month of potential drinking and drinking during the day. So many excuses. And in the middle, you got birthday parties and anniversaries and weddings and what have you. And then, of course, you get to summer, and summer's fun. It's just the sun shines, and boy, does a Corona sound great then. You get through summer, and then it repeats. It's just a never-ending thing. So, when I tried to think of a good time to start this test of myself of sobriety, there's never a good time. Jump in. You got to do it. If you're thinking about doing it, you got to jump in. There's never going to be an easy time. I tend to think the time I chose is the hardest. The holidays are hard. I do want a drink. I don't crave it per se, but there's times when it just sounds good. It just sounds good to have a drink. But anyway, going back to my story. So I started being erratic. I started being rude to my family. I started saying things to my wife that I most certainly wouldn't say sober, and I'm not proud of that, but that is the truth. I want to be truthful in this conversation. I started hiding alcohol. I started putting vodka in hidden places that I knew my wife wouldn't get to. I started guzzling alcohol. I would take a beer out into the garage and I would guzzle it because I didn't want my wife to see me doing it. And I knew she didn't like it, especially when I was home by myself. But I was telling myself it was fine because, I could go out with the boys. And that was one thing I always told my wife too, when I was trying to lie to myself and to her really, was that I don't do the golf leagues that a lot of people do. I'm in insurance sales and alcohol is everywhere. It's in most any sales position, to be fair. But I told myself I wasn't in those golf leagues. I wasn't in the bowling leagues. So I didn't have to, I was a good guy. I wasn't at the bar. I don't go to the bar. It's been years since I went to the bar, at least on any regular basis. There's certain times throughout the year that I might, but it's very odd. So I was telling myself that's okay. So drinking at home is even better. Well, it's not. That's just a lie to myself. So all that being said, my hangovers, I guess they say with age, I'm 42 now, they say it gets worse. Well, it starts to get worse. My hangovers got real bad. I would get really intense anxiety. And my anxiety were my hangovers. It wasn't so much that nauseous feeling, it was anxiety. And I spent a couple times in the hospital with panic attacks. And they do tests on you and they see nothing's wrong. And that's because it's the alcohol. It's coming down from that rush. That's what it is. And it took me a while to realize that. But that anxiety really affected me. And I was prescribed Xanax. And I would take it very minimally. I honestly was scared to be addicted to any pills. So I would take it only if I needed to. But it always was after a drinking night. Always. So, I would go to church on a Sunday morning with my family and I would just be anxious, super anxious, just wanting to get out of there, partially because I'm feeling a lot of guilt. Drinking to excess is a sin, and I knew that, and I'm trying to lie to myself and say it's not, but it is. And going to church the next day, feeling the way I'm feeling, knowing that my memory is wiped out of the night before, it wasn't a good feeling. It didn't feel right. So I started really wanting to think into this sobriety thing. I started praying about it really heavily. And I'll be honest, my prayers were something along the lines of, God, please help me to cut back drinking or stop, but please do it in a way that doesn't embarrass me, which is, again, a very selfish thing. Drinking can make you a selfish person. And so that's what I wanted. I wanted him to help me, but I wanted him to help me on my terms. Well, it was never going to be that way. I started looking in the mirror more, and I started noticing yellow in my eyes. And that scared me. It scared me a lot. I knew what was happening. My liver was not in its top functioning health. It was being fed too much poison. And that's what alcohol is. It's a poison. So that scared me, and I started praying more, and we started getting into more fights, my wife and I. Again, it started to because it's used to numb feelings in my life, and it goes back to even childhood, just feelings of being less than perfect, and then feelings of anxiety. I started a new business. That was a huge anxiety. My son had a huge medical condition, a tumor in his spine. That was a huge anxiety. So I would drink and drink and drink. And the yellow eyes became a big concern for me. I knew something was getting to be too much. Well, of course, in my prayers, it came to be that my wife and I had a pretty big fight one night, and it caused me to really dig deep. I've hurt a few people in my drinking, and I apologize for that. But I also needed to deal with things on my own. And that's just the bottom line. I was numbing everything, and I needed to just deal with life and what life gives me. And I can tell you, even 2 months in, it feels so much better. I will follow up with a video later speaking to the benefits as I feel them as today, but we're only 2 months in. I can tell you there's already a lot of benefits, but I'll kind of touch on that in a later video. I also got to talking to some of my friends, my drinking buddies, and one of them, great guy, he was my drinking buddy, and I loved him. And we both work in the same industry, and one day he just up and quit, and it was part of his anxiety issues, and I wanted to put myself there too, but I knew I couldn't. So I was in a way jealous of him, but I also was frustrated with him because I'm selfish and I don't want to lose my drinking buddy. That's not fair. So I started seeing other people in my life giving up alcohol, and I was always intrigued. And I talked to a few of them, but I never ever thought I could do it. I just couldn't. There's too many things in my life that it revolves around. So there I was, still knowing it was a problem and not being able to really give it up. Well, then this came to a head with my wife. We had a drag down fight, and I don't mean physically, I just mean truly. A fight where you wake up and you have to answer to that. And it was basically her telling me, you drank too much. You drink too much. And you've got to choose family over drinking. And I wasn't having it. So the fight just erupted, and it involved more than people than I wanted it to involve. But people always say you get to the lowest point in your life, and that's when it hits the fan. And there are stories of that, most certainly. I would say it's more that there were quite a few low points. I wouldn't say it was just one lowest point. It was just many low points, and the common denominator is always drinking. So I had to be truthful to myself. Also, in this, we find out I'm having a new child. This is our fifth child. We're Catholic. We love big families. And I want to be there for this child. How am I going to be there for this child? Being healthy. I mean, I'm 42 now. I want to be the best father, the best dad, the best spouse I can be. And I have to get alcohol out of my life in the unhealthy way that it's in it. I told my wife, I don't know if I'll drink again. I don't know. And I'm not going to say that it won't be a thing. But what I'll say is, if I can't have a glass of wine in a night, if I can't have a glass of wine and shut it down, then drinking is not my thing. It's just it's a problem that I have to deal with, and I am not going to allow that to seep back into my life and steal time. I can't help but notice I have more time on my hands. I am not for 5 hours the next day recovering, or a whole day. I'm not recovering from that nasty anxiety and gut rot. I'm present, which is a great, great thing. And I'll get more into that in the next video. I started talking to my brother-in-law who's been sober too. And again, kind of frustrated me when he went sober. And just being honest, I felt like, oh, no one's going to drink with me. Well, he said to me something one day that actually I think resonates. He said, Jared, just think about it. If alcohol was introduced today, everyone's so concerned with all of our food, all the poisons, the toxins in our food, and I am too. But he said, just think if they were to introduce alcohol today into society today, people would think it's crazy. We're just putting poison in our bodies and expecting a good result? No. So everything within moderation. Drinking's in the Bible. It is a celebratory thing that's in the Bible. So I know it's within reason that we are able to indulge. But there's some people like myself that I just need to do this for myself, and I feel so much better. So I want to thank you so much for listening to this. I'm not here to say I'm better than anyone. I'm most certainly not. This is for me, and this is kind of a documentation of my journey. And in a way, it's kind of to hold me to that. I want to be sober right now. I don't know how long it'll last, but I really want to do this for me. And I'm hoping a few months down the road, I can add another video to this telling you how I feel and still be 100% alcohol free. So thank you again for listening. I appreciate it. Best of luck to you. Hopefully this helps some of you. And if not, hopefully you just, if you're curious about it, feel free to reach out. I'm here to talk. And I love being open with who I am today. And right now things feel really good. So thanks again. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.